Alright, so here's the deal. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy writing something like this online, but here we are. I'm in my mid-30s, married. Well, technically still married, though that word feels heavier than it used to, and I've been carrying this story around in my head for a while. At first glance, everything about my life looked fine. Decent job, stable routine, the normal couple things, Friday night takeout, Sunday morning runs, arguing over who forgot to buy milk. Nothing dramatic. Nothing screaming trouble. But the truth is, little cracks had been forming long before I noticed. It started with tiny shifts, her staying late at work more often, me burying myself in side projects instead of asking questions, both of us pretending that silence wasn't screaming at us louder than words ever could. Looking back, I realized those small daily choices, her texting, "I'm tired, maybe tomorrow," and me shrugging it off instead of pushing to connect, were the real warning signs. I didn't know it then, but those small actions were about to set the stage for something that would blow my entire life open. And not in the way I expected. The first real shock came on an ordinary Tuesday. Funny how it's never the big dramatic days, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, that rip your world apart. It's always a Tuesday. I was heading home early from work because a client meeting got canceled. I thought I'd surprise her, maybe pick up some food on the way. We hadn't really had a proper dinner together in weeks. When I walked through the door, the apartment was quiet, too quiet. Her car was in the lot, her bag on the chair, but no sign of her in the living room or kitchen. I figured she was napping. I even smiled a little, thinking, good, she's resting. Maybe we can finally talk later. Then I heard it, a muffled laugh from the bedroom, and a second voice. I froze. My body went cold, but at the same time my heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. I can still remember that weird out-of-body feeling, like I was watching myself from the ceiling. I don't know why, but I didn't storm in. Instead, I walked straight back out the door, as quietly as I could, and sat in my car for over an hour, hands shaking, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to convince myself I hadn't actually heard what I'd heard. That was the moment the ground shifted under me, and it was only the beginning. That car ride was the longest hour of my life. I sat there in total silence, replaying those sounds over and over in my head. My brain kept fighting with itself. Maybe it's not what you think. Maybe it's just a friend. Maybe you're imagining things. But deep down, I already knew. Shock slowly turned into anger. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put them under my thighs just to keep them still. At one point, I actually started laughing, like some kind of maniac, because the absurdity of it all hit me. This is my wife. This is my life. And now it feels like some cheap soap opera. Part of me wanted to storm back inside, flip the lights on, and catch them red-handed. But another part, the quieter, more terrified part, knew that once I saw it with my own eyes, I could never unsee it. And that thought nearly broke me. So instead, I did something reckless. I drove. Just drove. No destination, no plan, just me and the road. I ended up at this all-night diner 20 miles out of town. Ordered black coffee I didn't drink. Stared at my phone, debating whether to call her or call anyone. I didn't. I just sat there, hollowed out, realizing that the life I thought I had might not even exist anymore. That night was the first time I understood what real loneliness feels like. And I swear it changed me forever. The next morning, I walked into the apartment like nothing had happened. I don't know why. Maybe I was testing her. Maybe I was testing myself. She was in the kitchen, making coffee, hair tied back like she always did before work. She looked normal. Too normal. I studied her face, waiting for some crack to show, some sign of guilt. But she just smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I wanted eggs. That was almost worse than catching her in the act. This casual, everyday routine, as if the night before hadn't even happened. I sat down at the table, heart pounding, and asked, "So, did you have a good night?" My voice was steady, but inside I was screaming. She didn't flinch, didn't miss a beat, just nodded and said, "Yeah, I went to bed early." That was it. That was the moment my anger flared hotter than ever. Because the lie wasn't just in her words, it was in how easily she said them. Like lying to me had become second nature. But I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I swallowed it down, forced a smile, and said, "Yeah, same." I hated myself for that. For letting it slide. For pretending. But at the same time, I knew I needed proof. Something undeniable. Because if I blew up without it, she'd spin the story, make me the crazy one. So I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth. And when I did, there'd be no going back. So yeah, I went full detective mode. I never thought I'd be that guy, the one snooping through his own wife's life. But the seed was already planted. And once it's there, it grows like poison ivy. First, I started paying closer attention. The late nights at work. The sudden need to keep her phone face down on the table. The quick little smiles at texts she never explained. All the things I used to brush off now screamed at me like neon signs. One night, when she was showering, I picked up her phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. The irony? I already knew her passcode. She had no reason to hide it, until now. I wasn't prepared for what I found. At first, it was just harmless-seeming messages. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing, but then the photos started popping up. Not explicit, but intimate enough that my chest caved in. The worst part? She looked happy in them. Happier than she had with me in months. I swear, my vision blurred. I had to sit down on the edge of the bed, the phone heavy in my hand like a brick. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out from the inside. That was the proof I thought I needed. But instead of giving me clarity, it only pulled me deeper into the storm. Because now I knew. And knowing meant I had to act. I wish I could say I confronted her right away, but the truth? I froze. For 2 whole days, I carried that knowledge like a live grenade in my chest. Every time she walked into the room, every time she kissed me goodbye, I wanted to scream. I know everything. But instead, I played along. Ate dinner with her. Watched TV with her. Even laughed at a joke she made. It was surreal, like living in a play where both of us knew our lines. But I was the only one who realized the script was fake. The breaking point came on a Friday night. She said she was meeting co-workers for drinks. I knew exactly where she was going. My stomach churned as I watched her put on lipstick she hadn't worn for me in months. When the door closed, I sat there in silence for 20 minutes, then grabbed my keys. I didn't even know where I was driving, but my gut led me downtown. And sure enough, there she was, across the street, walking arm in arm with him, laughing in that way she used to laugh with me when we were new. My heart dropped so hard, I actually stumbled back against a wall. That was the moment all the denial, all the waiting, all the pretending died. I didn't confront her then, either. I just drove home, sat on the couch in the dark, and waited for her to return. I had decided, tonight, she'd have to face me. I'll never forget the sound of the key turning in the lock that night. My whole body went rigid, like a soldier waiting for battle. The door opened, and there she was, hair a little messy, cheeks flushed, smelling faintly of wine and perfume. She looked happy, and that, somehow, was the cruelest cut of all. I didn't say anything right away. Just sat there in the dark, the TV off, a single lamp casting shadows across the room. When she noticed me, she jumped a little and laughed nervously. "Babe, you scared me. Why are you sitting like that?" That was it. The dam broke. My voice was low, but it came out sharper than I intended. "Who is he?" Her face froze. It was only for a second, but I saw it. The flicker of panic, the flash of guilt. Then she recovered, tried to roll her eyes like I was being ridiculous. "What are you talking about?" I stood up, pulled her phone from my pocket. I'd taken it earlier when she left it charging. The screen was lit up with the very messages I'd read before. "Don't lie to me. I know everything." She went pale. For a moment, she just stood there, mouth opening and closing like she was searching for an excuse. Then came the tears, and the apologies, and the same line every cheater probably uses. It didn't mean anything. But the truth? It meant everything, because it shattered us. The fight that night was like nothing I'd ever experienced. I didn't yell at first. I thought I would. But instead my words came out slow, heavy, like lead bullets. "How long?" I asked. She tried to dodge it, but I pressed harder. "How long?" Finally, she whispered, "A few months." That gutted me. Months. While I was busy working overtime to save for a vacation. While I was cooking dinner, folding laundry, kissing her goodnight. She'd been living a second life, and I had been the fool financing it. I exploded then. Not just at her, but at myself, at the whole rotten situation. I paced the room, my hands shaking, voice cracking between rage and grief. She cried, begged me to calm down, said it was just a mistake, and that she still loved me. But every word she spoke felt like poison. I shouted things I never thought I'd say. That she'd destroyed us, that I couldn't even recognize her anymore, that she had taken our marriage and set it on fire for a thrill. She kept insisting it was nothing serious, that it was just physical. That line almost made me laugh, because the texts I read weren't just physical. They were intimate. They were full of love, the kind she hadn't shown me in years. At some point, I just stopped. My voice gave out, and I sat down on the couch, numb. She reached out, tried to touch my arm, but I pulled away. I couldn't even stand the thought of her skin on mine. That night, we slept in separate rooms. Or rather, she slept. I lay awake until morning, staring at the ceiling, realizing my marriage had already died long before I caught her. The days after that fight felt like walking through a graveyard. The house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. This was the heavy, suffocating silence that presses on your chest until you can barely breathe. She tried to go about her routine like normal, making coffee, heading to work, sending me little texts asking how I was doing. I ignored most of them. The sight of her name popping up on my screen made my stomach twist. Inside, I was a mess. Anger would hit me in waves. Rage so strong, I wanted to smash every picture frame we owned. Then, just as suddenly, I'd collapse into sadness so deep I could barely move. I'd sit on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, wondering how the woman I loved more than anything could turn into a stranger right in front of me. The worst part? Nights. Lying in bed alone, my mind racing. Replaying every moment of our marriage, trying to pinpoint when it all started slipping. Was it something I did? Something I didn't do? Or was she always capable of this, and I just never saw it? I didn't have answers. Just a growing sense that the man I used to be, the trusting, hopeful one, was gone. And in his place was someone harder, colder, but also strangely clearer. Because underneath the grief, a thought was forming. I had to decide. Stay and swallow this betrayal for the rest of my life, or leave and rebuild from nothing. I didn't wake up one morning with a grand decision already made. It wasn't that clean. Instead, it came through these tiny, almost invisible daily actions, stuff that felt meaningless at first. I started by going for runs in the mornings. Not because I suddenly loved jogging, but because I couldn't stand lying in that bed another second. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but for those 30 minutes, I wasn't the guy who got cheated on. I was just moving forward. At work, I stopped hiding behind, "I'm fine," and actually poured myself into projects. My boss noticed. Colleagues started asking me for input more often. It wasn't some overnight success story, but little by little, I felt pieces of myself returning. At home, I cooked meals for myself, cleaned up after myself, built a routine that didn't depend on her. It was both painful and liberating. Every dish I washed reminded me, I can do this on my own. Meanwhile, she kept trying to apologize, to talk, to fix things. Some nights, she'd cry and beg me to see a counselor with her. But every time I looked at her, I saw those texts, that smile she gave him, and I knew counseling couldn't erase that. The small daily choices, running, working, cooking, saying no, were slowly carving out a path. And one morning, after finishing a 5K I never thought I'd run, I knew. I was leaving. I told her on a Sunday morning. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just sat her down at the kitchen table, poured 2 cups of coffee, and said, calmly but firmly, "I'm done. We're done." For a second, she looked like she didn't hear me. Then came the pleading, the tears, the excuses, the promises she would change. But I just shook my head. Every small daily action I'd taken, running, working, building my life back piece by piece, had led me to this moment. I knew what I wanted, and it wasn't her anymore. She left the apartment crying, carrying her bag like she was fleeing a war she had started. And I stayed behind, finally feeling the silence differently. Not suffocating, not heavy, free. That first week alone was hard, yes. There were nights I wanted to crawl back into the bed we used to share, nights I wanted to call her and beg for the lie to go away. But I didn't. Instead, I kept running, kept working, kept building the small habits that had started to restore me. By the end of the month, I realized something important. The daily choices I had almost ignored, simple things like eating right, exercising, reading, focusing on work, had done more to heal me than any dramatic confrontation ever could. Here's where things got weirdly unexpected. Because once I started taking control of my daily habits, life started throwing surprises at me. Not the kind of drama that tears you apart, but opportunities one never imagined. My boss noticed my focus and offered me a leadership role on a project that had been stagnant for months. I said yes, even though it scared the hell out of me. Then, a friend I hadn't talked to in years reached out, wanting to collaborate on a side business idea. At first, I almost ignored it, but something told me to go for it. That small yes turned into a partnership that's now a serious side hustle. Even socially, things shifted. Because I was happier, more confident, more present, people wanted to be around me. I reconnected with friends I had neglected, met new people, and realized that small actions, saying yes to a run, showing up at work, taking care of myself, had built momentum I didn't even know I was capable of creating. All of this happened quietly at first. No fireworks, no sudden lottery win, just a series of small, consistent choices that suddenly led to results I hadn't expected. And it made me realize how fragile life can be, but also how powerful you are when you commit to tiny, daily steps. One thing I didn't expect was how much my emotional recovery fed into my success. At first, I thought work and life improvements were separate from the heartbreak. But the truth? They were inseparable. Every run I finished, every project I nailed, every small victory at home, it wasn't just about proving I could survive without her. It was about reclaiming myself. And that clarity spilled into everything else. Decisions at work became sharper, my creativity grew, and I found myself taking risks I never would have considered before. Then came the weird twist. She tried reaching out months later. Casual texts, like nothing happened. I didn't respond. At first, I felt the old twinge, anger, sadness, but it was weaker now, almost laughable. I realized that my life had moved forward while hers had stayed stuck. She had a choice, and I had already made mine, and that choice had changed everything. I could finally see it. The tiny, seemingly meaningless actions, the morning runs, the extra effort at work, the self-care, had compounded. They weren't dramatic gestures. They didn't make headlines. But they rebuilt me. And that rebuilding? It led me to success, not just financially or socially, but emotionally. By the time a year had passed, my life looked completely different. I'd taken that promotion at work and thrived in it. The side business my friend and I started was actually turning a profit. I had a new routine that kept me grounded and energized. Even my social life had blossomed in ways I never imagined. But the biggest success? Me. Not the salary, not the side hustle, not the compliments or recognition. Me. I was calmer, more focused, more confident, and, most importantly, I trusted myself again. I had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and the slow, quiet torture of doubt, and I had built a life worth living on my own terms. And the crazy part? None of it happened overnight. It was the accumulation of countless small actions. Waking up early, running, doing my work well, saying no when I needed to, saying yes when opportunity knocked. Those tiny decisions became momentum, and momentum created transformation. If you told me back on that Tuesday I'd sit here a year later, stronger than I ever imagined, I would have laughed. But here I am, and it's real. So here's the takeaway, the lesson I wish someone had shouted at me that Tuesday. Small, consistent actions matter more than grand gestures. Life doesn't heal or improve because of one dramatic decision or one epic confrontation. It's the tiny choices you make every day. Wake up and run. Show up at work. Take care of yourself. Say no when it counts. Say yes when it counts. Don't wait for life to hand you clarity, strength, or success. You build it, piece by piece. And about betrayal? It's brutal. It's devastating. But surviving it isn't about revenge or proving her wrong. It's about proving yourself right. That you can live, thrive, and even find happiness again. That the life you thought was over can be rebuilt, one small choice at a time. I'm not perfect. I still have rough days. But I'm proud of the man I've become, the life I've built, and the momentum I've created from the rubble of heartbreak. So if you're in that place, feeling crushed, betrayed, or stuck, start small. One choice, one action, then another. Eventually, you'll look up and realize you've created a life you never thought possible.